The war had grown beyond anything the Vorthak had warned the humans about. Intelligence analyst Greg Thompson spent his days studying reports from across the galaxy, trying to understand what the Devourers really wanted. Greg was good at finding patterns in data that other people missed. He worked in a small office aboard the UES Discovery surrounded by computer screens, showing information from hundreds of worlds. Greg discovered something terrifying in the data. The Devourers were not just random monsters that ate thoughts and dreams. They were all connected to each other like fingers on a giant hand. Every shadow creature that humans had fought was actually part of one huge intelligence that had been consuming realities for billions of years. This cosmic entity had been trapped between dimensions since the beginning of time, but it was using the human dream network as a way to finally break free. The entity was incredibly old and patient. It had waited in its prison for longer than entire galaxies existed. Now it could taste freedom through the connected minds of humanity. Every person who used the dream network made the entity stronger. Every battle the humans won was actually helping their enemy learn more about how to defeat them. The cosmic horror was playing a game that lasted millions of years, and humans had been alive for only a tiny part of that time. Captain Morrison called together the best dream warriors for a desperate mission. The team included Tony Martinez, who had become expert at creating reality bombs, and Carlos Rodriguez, who could build dream machines that amplified human imagination. They also brought Helen Shaw, who had survived more reality anchor missions than any other pilot. The plan was to attack the source of all Devourer activity by traveling through the dream realm to find where the cosmic entity was, imprisoned. The assault team entered the deepest shared dream that humans had ever created. This was not the safe white room where training happened, but a dark, twisted space that existed at the edge of human consciousness. Here, the barrier between dreams and reality was so thin that thoughts became solid and imagination could kill. The team members appeared in their dream forms wearing armor made of crystallized willpower and carrying weapons forged from pure human determination. The journey to the entity's prison took them through landscapes that defied all logic. They walked across bridges made of frozen screams and climbed mountains built from the bones of dead civilizations. The sky above them was filled with the ghosts of every species the cosmic entity had ever consumed. Billions of extinct races watched the small group of humans with eyes that had lost all hope long ago. At the center of this nightmare realm stood the prison that the Vorthak had built millions of years earlier. It looked like a massive crystal sphere surrounded by walls of flowing energy. Inside the sphere, something moved that was too large and horrible for human minds to fully understand. The cosmic entity pressed against its prison walls with tentacles made of living darkness. Each tentacle was larger than Earth and covered with eyes that had seen the death of entire universes. The battle began before the humans could even approach the prison. Devourers swarmed toward them from every direction. These were not the small shadow creatures that had attacked human colonies, but massive beings that could devour entire star systems. Tony's reality bombs barely scratched their dark surfaces. Helen's dream weapons seemed tiny compared to enemies that stretched across dimensions. But the humans had learned something important during their months of training. They fought differently than any species the cosmic entity had ever faced. Where other races used the same tactics over and over again, humans adapted constantly. They changed their battle plans in the middle of fights and created new weapons from whatever materials they could imagine. Carlos built dream machines in the middle of combat using blueprints that existed only in his mind. These devices amplified the team's abilities and allowed them to create constructs larger than anything they had made before. Tony learned to combine his reality bombs with Helen's piloting skills to create explosive attacks that could damage enemies across multiple dimensions at once. The cosmic entity noticed the humans for the first time. Through all its devourer servants, it spoke to them in a voice that sounded like the death cries of 1,000,000,000,000 worlds. The entity told the humans they were insignificant insects compared to beings that had ruled reality since before their son was born. It promised to consume their entire species slowly so it could savor every human mind as it died. But the humans were not impressed by threats from something hiding inside a prison. Tony Martinez looked at the massive cosmic horror and laughed. He told the entity that humans had faced bullies before and always found ways to fight back. The other team members joined in mocking their enemy. They made jokes about how pathetic it was for something so old and powerful to be trapped by creatures it claimed were inferior. The entity's rage was terrible to witness. Its tentacles smashed against the prison wall so hard that cracks appeared in the crystal sphere. The Devourer servants went wild with fury and attacked the humans with desperate violence, but anger made the shadow creatures careless. They left openings in their defenses that the human warriors exploited with ruthless efficiency. Colony Administrator Lisa Grant made a horrible discovery back on Kepler 442b. The Devourers had learned to copy the people they consumed. Perfect duplicates of eaten humans were appearing in dreams and claiming to be the real people. These false humans knew everything the originals had known, including personal memories and private secrets. They were so convincing that even close family members could not tell the difference. Trust became impossible when anyone might be a shadow creature in disguise. Married couples accused each other of being fake. Parents doubted their own children. Friends turned against each other because nobody could prove they were real. The Devourers were destroying human society from within by making people afraid of everyone they loved. Dr. Clark tried to develop tests that could identify false humans, but the shadow creatures adapted quickly. They learned to mimic human emotions perfectly, and even showed the same brain patterns as real people. The only way to be completely sure someone was real was to watch them get hurt in a dream battle. False humans would dissolve when seriously injured, while real people would just wake up. The paranoia was spreading faster than the dream network itself. Entire colonies were tearing themselves apart as people searched for infiltrators who might not even exist. Some settlements shut down their dream network connections completely and isolated themselves from the rest of humanity. They preferred loneliness to the constant fear of shadow creatures wearing familiar faces. Meanwhile, the assault team was fighting deeper into the nightmare realm around the cosmic entity's prison. They discovered that the Vorthak had not been entirely honest about the nature of their enemy. The ancient Guardians had once been a proud civilization with cities and technology and art, but when they chose to become pure consciousness to fight the entity they had sacrificed, everything that made them who they were, Keeper, Nethys appeared to the human warriors as they approached, the final barrier around the prison. The ancient Vorthak looked tired and sad as it explained the truth about the endless war. Every species that had ever fought the cosmic entity had eventually made the same choice. They gave up their physical forms to become eternal guardians, but in doing so, they lost their ability to create and grow and change. They became perfect soldiers but stopped being truly alive. The Vorthak offered humans the same bargain. They could abandon their bodies and join the eternal watch around the prison. Their consciousness would become part of the barrier keeping the cosmic entity trapped. They would live forever, but they would never again feel the warmth of sunlight or the touch of someone they loved. They would become weapons in an endless war with no hope of victory or peace. Tony Martinez spoke for all humanity when he rejected the offer. He told Keeper Nethys that humans did not give up hope even when facing impossible odds. They would find a third option that did not require sacrificing everything that made life worth living. The other team members agreed. They would rather die as humans than live forever as emotionless guardians. The cosmic entity heard their defiance and laughed with the voices of 1 billion consumed worlds. It told the humans they were fools who did not understand the scale of the forces they were fighting. The entity had eaten entire realities and would soon add the human universe to its collection. No species had ever found a way to truly defeat it because it was older and more powerful than the laws of physics themselves. But the humans had been studying their enemy during the battle. Carlos Rodriguez noticed something important about how the cosmic entity moved and attacked. It was incredibly powerful, but it was also incredibly old. It fought the same way it had fought for billions of years because that was all it knew how to do. The entity could adapt to new weapons and tactics, but it could not truly innovate or create something completely original. Greg Thompson realized that this was humanity's greatest advantage. Humans were young and creative and constantly changing. They could imagine solutions that had never existed before. The cosmic entity had consumed every other species it encountered because they all fought like warriors from their own time and culture. The final battle began not in the dark spaces between realities, but in the collective consciousness of humanity itself. Every person connected to the Dream Network became a soldier, whether they wanted to or not. Billions of humans across hundreds of worlds fell asleep at the same moment and found themselves standing together on a vast plain that stretched beyond every horizon. The ground beneath their feet was made of crystallized human dreams, and the sky above them burned with the light of pure hope. Shop owner Betty Collins had never thought of herself as a warrior. She ran a small store on Mars where she sold books and coffee to miners and engineers. Betty was 60 years old with gray hair and tired eyes, but in the shared dream, she appeared as she had always seen herself in her heart. She was young and strong and ready to fight for everything she loved. In her hands materialized a sword made of every story she had ever read about heroes who refused to give up. Teacher Frank Adams stood beside Betty, holding a shield that glowed with the knowledge he had shared with thousands of students over the years. Frank taught history at a school on Europa, and had always believed that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they worked together. Around them gathered every human being who had ever used the Dream Network. Children and adults and elderly people all appeared in their idealized forms, ready to face an enemy that had consumed entire civilizations. The cosmic entity emerged from its dimensional prison like a cancer spreading through reality itself. It was no longer contained by Vorthak barriers or ancient technology. The creature appeared as a writhing mass of consumed civilizations with tentacles that stretched across light years. Every part of its body was covered with the faces of species it had devoured over billions of years. The entity's voice was the combined death screams of 1 trillion worlds as it promised to add humanity to its collection. But the humans were not afraid. They had learned something during their months of fighting shadow creatures in dreams and nightmares. Fear was just another enemy that could be defeated through courage and determination. Betty Collins raised her story sword and shouted a battle cry that was echoed by billions of voices. The sound shattered the cosmic entity's tentacles and sent cracks running through its impossible form. The Vorthak watched in amazement as humans did something no other species had ever attempted. Instead of fighting the cosmic entity with weapons or technology, they were fighting it with pure, stubborn hope. Where other civilizations had fallen to despair when facing the universe devourer, humans refused to believe they could lose. They transformed their fear into anger, and their anger into determination to protect everything they loved. Dr. Stone had discovered the secret during his studies of human brain patterns during dream battles. When humans truly believed in something, their minds could actually change reality around them. The quantum field that connected all consciousness responded to strong enough emotions and will. Other species had logical minds that accepted the laws of physics, but humans had imagination that could rewrite those laws. When enough people believed the same thing at the same time, the cosmic entity tried to consume human minds the way it had eaten every other species, but something went wrong. Instead of tasting despair and terror, it found hope and defiance. The creature had sustained itself for eons by feeding on the fear and hopelessness of dying civilizations. Human dreams were full of light and joy and stubborn refusal to surrender. This was food the entity could not digest. Tony Martinez led a charge of dream warriors directly into the cosmic entity's center. His reality bombs were no longer small weapons but massive explosions of human creativity that tore holes in the creature's form. Behind him came Helen Shaw, piloting a dream construct that looked like a ship made of crystallized courage. Her weapons fired bursts of pure human determination that burned through tentacles larger than planets. Carlos Rodriguez had built the ultimate dream machine, using blueprints that existed only in collective human imagination. The device amplified every positive human emotion and broadcast it across dimensions. Love and hope and joy became weapons more powerful than any physical force. The cosmic entity writhed in agony as it was force-fed happiness and optimism instead of the despair it needed to survive. Children were especially powerful in this final battle. Their minds had not yet learned all the rules about what was possible and impossible. 10-year-old Danny Kim from New Tokyo imagined the cosmic entity shrinking down to the size of a house pet. 8-year-old Maria Santos from Luna Colony pictured the creature wearing a funny hat and dancing. Their innocent laughter became a weapon that made the universe devourer doubt its own terrible power. The entity fought back with everything it had learned over billions of years. It created false versions of Earth and human loved ones to confuse the dreamers. It showed them visions of every human world being consumed and destroyed. It promised to make their deaths quick and painless if they would just give up and accept the inevitable. But humans had heard these threats before from bullies and dictators and monsters. Their answer was always the same stubborn refusal to surrender their dreams. Keeper Nethys and the other Vorthak joined the final assault, not as commanders, but as students. The ancient guardians had forgotten what it felt like to truly hope for victory, instead of just preventing defeat. They watched in wonder as humans did something that had never been tried before. Instead of building walls to contain the cosmic entity, humans were transforming it into something that could not hurt anyone. The breakthrough came when Greg Thompson realized what the entity really was. Underneath all its accumulated hunger and hatred, at its core it was just very old and very lonely. It had consumed so many civilizations because it could not stand being alone in the empty spaces between realities. Every species it ate became part of it, but they also died in the process. The entity was trapped in an endless cycle of destroying the only things that could keep it company. Dr. Clark led a group of scientists and doctors in a different kind of attack. Instead of hurting the cosmic entity, they began healing it. They used their medical knowledge and human compassion to treat the creature's loneliness and pain. They showed it what it felt like to have friends and family who chose to stay close instead of being forced to become part of something larger. The entity resisted at first because kindness was something it had not experienced for longer than civilizations existed, but humans were persistent in their compassion, the same way they were persistent in their defiance. They kept offering friendship and understanding, even when the creature lashed out with tentacles that could destroy star systems. Slowly, the cosmic entity began to change. The transformation was gradual at first, then faster and faster, as more humans joined the effort. The entity's tentacles became smaller and less threatening. Its voice changed from the screams of the dying to confused questions about why these tiny creatures were trying to help instead of running away. The faces of consumed species faded from its surface and were replaced by expressions of hope and curiosity. Shop owner Betty Collins was the first human to reach out and touch the transformed entity without fear. Her hand passed through what had once been living darkness and came away warm and clean. The cosmic creature had become something new. It was still incredibly old and powerful, but it was no longer hungry for destruction. Instead, it was curious about creation and growth and all the things that humans took for granted. The entity asked the humans what it should do, now that it was no longer a devourer of worlds. Captain Morrison suggested that it could help explore the spaces between realities and find new places for life to grow. Dr. West thought it could use its vast knowledge to heal damaged dimensions and restore civilizations that had been partially consumed. Teacher Frank Adams believed it could become a guardian that protected young species instead of destroying them. The cosmic entity liked all these ideas. For the first time in billions of years, it had purposes that involved creating instead of consuming. It thanked the humans for showing it a different way to exist, and promised to spend eternity making up for all the damage it had done. The creature began to fade from the shared dream as it went to explore its new role in the universe. The dream network was rebuilt with new safeguards that prevented dimensional intrusions but allowed humans to share experiences and knowledge safely. Children born after the war grew up able to connect their minds with friends and family across the galaxy. They learned from each other in ways that previous generations could never have imagined. The shared dreams became humanity's greatest tool for unity and understanding. The Vorthak chose to remain as partners with humanity instead of returning to their eternal isolation. They taught humans to explore the dream realm safely and to understand the deeper mysteries of consciousness itself. In return, humans showed them how to hope and create and grow, instead of just fighting endless defensive wars. Years passed and the events became known as the Dream War, though historians noted it was more like a healing than a traditional conflict. Humanity had faced the ultimate test of their character when confronted with cosmic horror, and chose compassion over violence. The training began in the strangest classroom humans had ever known. Every night when people fell asleep, they found themselves in a shared dream space that the Vorthak had created. The place looked like an endless white room with no walls or ceiling. Keeper Nethys and other ancient warriors appeared as figures made of flowing silver light. They began teaching humans how to fight creatures that existed only in thoughts and dreams. Former Marine Sergeant Tony Martinez was one of the first volunteers. Tony had fought in 3 different wars and thought he knew everything about combat. But dream fighting was completely different from anything he had learned. In dreams, a person's will and imagination were more important than muscles or weapons. Tony had to learn how to stay awake inside his dreams and control everything around him through pure thought. The Vorthak teachers showed the humans how to create dream constructs. These were objects and weapons that existed only in the mind, but could hurt creatures from other dimensions. Tony learned to imagine a sword made of burning light that could cut through shadow beings. Other students created shields that could block attacks from creatures made of pure hunger. Some people were better at making defensive walls, while others specialized in weapons that could reach across star systems. Medical Officer Dr. Nancy West was documenting everything that happened during the training sessions. She discovered something frightening. When people got hurt in dream battles, their physical bodies showed real injuries. If a devourer clawed someone in a dream, that person would wake up with actual scratch marks. If a shadow creature bit a dream warrior, their real body would have tooth marks and bleeding wounds. The connection between dreams and reality was much stronger than anyone had thought. Dr. West treated dozens of injuries that should not have existed. Broken bones from dream falls, burns from imaginary fires, cuts from weapons that were never real. Some people died in their sleep when dream injuries were too severe for their physical bodies to handle. The war was killing humans before they even learned how to fight back properly. Meanwhile, the devourers were getting bolder and stronger. Research Station Epsilon 7 was a small outpost near the edge of human space, where 30 scientists studied radiation from dying stars. Administrator Peter Hayes sent an emergency message saying that 17 of his people had fallen into dream comas. The shadow creatures were no longer content to hunt only in dreams. They were beginning to appear in the real world as patches of absolute darkness that moved like living things. Peter described how the dark patches consumed everything they touched. Light bulbs went out when the darkness passed over them. Electronic equipment stopped working. Metal became brittle and crumbled. The temperature dropped so low that water froze instantly. Worst of all, the darkness seemed to be growing larger every day. Peter was afraid that his entire station would be consumed if help did not arrive soon. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez had been working day and night to find a solution. Carlos was good at solving problems that other people thought were impossible. He studied the quantum computers that powered the dream network and realized they could be modified to create something he called reality anchors. These devices would strengthen the barrier between dreams and the waking world. They would stop the devourers from crossing over into normal space. But there was a problem. The reality anchors had to be placed in star systems where devourer activity was strongest. Someone would have to fly a ship into the most dangerous places in the galaxy, while maintaining a dream connection, to fight the creatures on both levels of reality at the same time. It was the most dangerous mission anyone had ever attempted. The first volunteer was pilot Helen Shaw. Helen's sister had been one of the early casualties when a devourer consumed her dream self and left her body in a coma. Helen wanted revenge, but more than that, she wanted to protect other families from the same loss. She trained harder than anyone else to master dream combat while also learning to fly the prototype ship called UES Oniric. The Oniric was unlike any vessel humans had built before. Half the ship contained normal equipment like engines and life support systems. The other half was filled with quantum processors and dream amplifiers that would keep Helen connected to the shared human consciousness. While she traveled through real space, she would be fighting battles in two different realities at the same time. Helen's first mission was to place a reality anchor in the Vega system, where 3 colonies had reported devourer manifestations. As her ship approached Vega, she entered a controlled dream state, while autopilot systems flew her through space. In the dream realm, she could see the star system as the devourers saw it. Dark tentacles stretched between planets like a spider web of hunger. Shadow creatures larger than moons floated in the spaces between worlds. The battle began as soon as Helen entered Vega space. Devourers attacked her dream self while her physical ship was surrounded by patches of moving darkness. Helen fought with dream weapons while using her ship's real lasers and missiles. She had to stay conscious in both realities while shadow creatures tried to tear apart her mind and destroy her vessel. Helen managed to deploy the first reality anchor near Vega's 4th planet. The device activated and created a bubble of stable space where the laws of physics worked normally. Inside the bubble, the devourers could not maintain their physical forms. They retreated back into the dream realm where Helen continued fighting them with sword constructs made of pure human determination. More pilots volunteered for reality anchor missions. Each deployment was dangerous, but the anchors were working. Star systems protected by the devices saw fewer devourer manifestations. The shadow creatures were being pushed back into the spaces between realities where they belonged. As more humans joined the dream war, they discovered something that surprised even the ancient Vorthak. Human creativity and adaptability were far beyond what any other species had ever shown. Where the alien warriors fought with techniques that were millions of years old, humans improvised constantly. They created new types of dream weapons and battle strategies that no one had ever seen before. Tony Martinez invented something he called reality bombs. These were dream constructs that exploded when they touched a devourer and sent the creature flying back through dimensional barriers. Dr. West learned to create healing fields and shared dreams that could repair injuries to both dream bodies and physical forms. Carlos Rodriguez designed dream machines that could amplify human imagination and make their constructs more powerful. The devourers had never faced anything like human ingenuity. For millions of years, they had consumed species that fought the same way every time, but humans changed their tactics constantly. They learned from every battle and became stronger with each victory. Even when they lost fights, they found new ways to hurt creatures that had seemed invincible. Young people were especially good at dream warfare. Children who grew up playing video games understood instinctively how to control imaginary environments. Teenagers created dream constructs that were works of art and weapons of war at the same time. College students wrote new fighting techniques like they were programming computer code. But the war was far from over. The devourers were learning too. Each human they consumed taught them something new about human psychology and behavior. They began creating perfect copies of people they had eaten, and sending these false humans back to infiltrate the resistance. Trust became impossible when any friend or family member might be a shadow creature wearing a familiar face. The reality anchors were slowing down the invasion but not stopping it completely. The devourers had found ways to work around the devices by attacking star systems from multiple dimensions at once. They were also growing smarter about avoiding the anchors entirely and focusing their attacks on unprotected colony worlds. Keeper Nethys warned the human leaders that the war was entering a new phase. The shadow creatures were no longer just trying to feed on individual minds. They were preparing for something much worse. The ancient Vorthak had detected signs that the devourers were planning to break free from their dimensional prison entirely and consume all of reality itself. Humans would have to do more than just fight defensive battles. They would have to take the war to the enemy's home territory in the spaces between worlds where normal matter could not exist. It would require brave volunteers to leave their physical bodies behind and become pure consciousness like the Vorthak. But unlike the ancient guardians, the humans would still be connected to the living world through bonds of love and hope that could not be broken by any darkness. Communications Officer Ryan Phillips had always been good at sleeping. He could fall asleep anywhere and have the most amazing dreams. When the Dream Network started working, he was one of the first people to sign up. Ryan lived on a space station near Earth, and every night he would connect his mind to colonists living on Proxima Centauri b. The shared dreams were wonderful. He could walk on alien beaches and see 2 red suns in the sky. He could talk to people he had never met and learn about their lives on a world 4 light-years away. On the second night, something went wrong. Ryan was dreaming about flying over the crystal mountains of Proxima Centauri b with a colonist named Maria when he heard whispers. The voices did not come through his ears but seemed to appear directly in his thoughts. The whispers spoke in a language he had never heard, but somehow he understood every word. They talked about darkness that ate everything and ancient seals that were breaking. The voices sounded scared and desperate, like they were trying to warn him about something terrible. Maria heard the whispers too. She grabbed Ryan's arm in the dream and asked him what the voices were saying. Before he could answer, the dream started to change. The beautiful crystal mountains turned black and twisted. The red suns went out one by one until only darkness remained. Something moved in the shadows at the edge of their vision, something that should not exist in any dream. Ryan woke up screaming. His body was covered in sweat and his heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. He checked the Dream Network computer and saw that Maria had woken up at exactly the same time. She was probably as scared as he was. Ryan wrote a report about the whispers and sent it to Dr. Stone, who was in charge of monitoring the Dream Network for problems. Dr. Stone read Ryan's report and decided it was not important. The human brain was complicated, and the Dream Network was new technology. Sometimes people had strange experiences when their minds were connected to machines. Stone had seen reports like this before from other test subjects. He filed Ryan's report away and forgot about it. That was a mistake he would remember for the rest of his life. The next night, Ryan tried the Dream Network again. This time he connected with colonists on 3 different worlds. The shared dream started normally with everyone meeting in a beautiful garden that existed only in their minds. But then the whispers came back. This time they were louder and more urgent. The voices told Ryan that the barriers were weakening and the hungry ones were coming. They said that humans had opened a door that should have stayed closed forever. Other people in the shared dream heard the whispers too. A farmer from Kepler 442b started crying and said the voices were telling him about creatures made of living darkness. A teacher from Wolf 359 said she could see shadows moving at the edges of the dream garden. One by one, the dreamers began to panic as the whispers grew louder and the shadows grew darker. Then one of the shadows stepped into the light. The thing that emerged was like nothing any human had ever seen. It looked like a hole in reality itself. Where it moved, the dream began to dissolve. Plants withered and died. The sky cracked like broken glass. The creature had no solid form but seemed to be made of hunger itself. It reached out with tendrils of pure darkness toward the terrified dreamers. Everyone woke up at once. Ryan found messages waiting for him from all the other people who had shared the nightmare. They were all asking the same questions. What was that thing? Where did it come from? Were they safe? Ryan did not have answers, but he knew that Dr. Stone needed to see these reports right away. This time, Dr. Stone could not ignore what was happening. Similar reports were coming in from Dream Network users on dozens of worlds. People were sharing nightmares instead of pleasant dreams. Strange voices were speaking in unknown languages. Dark creatures were appearing at the edges of their shared consciousness. Stone realized that the Dream Network had made contact with something that was not human. The whispers belonged to beings that called themselves Vorthak. Through broken dream conversations, they tried to explain what was happening. The Vorthak had been alive for millions of years, fighting creatures from the spaces between realities. These shadow beings called Devourers fed on conscious thoughts and dreams. The Vorthak had built prison walls around the Devourers to keep them trapped, but the human dream network was making those walls weaker. Keeper Nethys was the voice that spoke most clearly through the whispers. It told the humans that their dream machines had created a bright beacon in dimensions that should have remained dark. The Devourers had been hungry for so long that they were drawn to the human thoughts like moths to a flame. Every night that humans used the dream network made it easier for the shadow creatures to break through their prison. Colony Surveyor Danny Brooks was working on the frontier world of Gliza, 667 CC, when he became the first human to see a Devourer's true form. Danny was sharing a dream with his wife back on Earth when the creature appeared. Unlike the shadow glimpses other people had seen, this Devourer was fully formed and completely real within the dream space. It looked like a writhing mass of black tentacles with eyes that burned like dying stars. The Devourer moved toward Danny's wife first. She screamed as the creature's tentacles wrapped around her dream body. Danny watched in horror as the thing began to feed. It was not eating her flesh, but something much more important. It was consuming her thoughts and memories and dreams. Danny could see his wife's face growing blank as everything that made her who she was disappeared into the hungry darkness. Danny tried to fight the creature, but his dream hands passed right through it. The Devourer finished feeding on his wife and turned toward him. Up close, Danny could see that the creature was not just one being, but thousands of consumed minds pressed together into a single horrible form. He could hear the voices of everyone the Devourer had ever eaten crying out from inside its darkness. The creature reached for Danny, but something stopped it. Keeper Nethys appeared in the dream like a warrior made of silver light. The ancient Vorthak fought the Devourer with weapons that seemed to be made of pure will and determination. The battle lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Finally, the Devourer retreated back into the shadows, leaving Danny alone with the alien guardian. Danny woke up to find his wife in a deep coma. The doctors could not explain what was wrong with her. Her brain showed normal activity, but she would not wake up. Danny knew the truth. The Devourer had eaten her dream self and left only an empty shell behind. 3 other colonists who had been sharing the same dream were also in comas. They had become the first human casualties of a war they did not even know existed. Captain Morrison immediately ordered the Dream Network to be shut down, but Dr. Clark made a terrible discovery. The quantum connections between human minds had become permanent. The Dream Network could not be turned off. Even with the machines powered down, people's minds remained linked together. The Devourers now had a highway that stretched across the galaxy, connecting every human settlement. Keeper Nethys spoke to the humans through the dreams of Security Chief Katie Adams. The ancient guardian offered humanity a choice. They could learn to fight in the dream realm as the Vorthak had done for millions of years, or they could watch as the devourers consumed every human mind in the galaxy. The creatures grew stronger. With each person they ate, and soon they would be able to cross from dreams into the waking world. The war for humanity's survival would be fought in the place where logic meant nothing and imagination was the only weapon that mattered. The humans had to learn quickly because the devourers were getting hungrier, and the prison walls were cracking faster every day. Dr. Amanda Clark walked into the big meeting room, where all the important people from Earth sat waiting. She carried a small device in her hand that would show them something amazing. The year was 2387, and humans had spread to many worlds across the galaxy, but they all felt alone and far from each other. Amanda had spent 10 years working on something that could change everything. She pressed a button and a bright blue light filled the air above the table, showing pictures and numbers that made the council members lean forward in their seats. The Dream Network was her life's work. Amanda had discovered that human brains made tiny electric signals when people slept and dreamed. These signals could be caught and sent to other brains far away through space using special machines. When two people slept at the same time with the machines turned on, they could share the same dream and see the same things. They could talk to each other and even learn new things while they slept. The first tests had worked so well that people woke up knowing skills they never had before. Dr. Richard Stone sat in the front row watching Amanda explain how the technology worked. He was the best brain doctor in the solar system and had helped Amanda understand how human minds work during sleep. Next to him, Captain Jake Morrison nodded as Amanda talked about the special ship called UES Discovery that would carry the dream machines to other worlds. Jake was a good pilot who had flown to more star systems than anyone else alive. He would take the dream machines to places where humans lived on planets far from Earth. The council leader stood up and asked Amanda how many people could use the dream machines at once. She smiled and told them that there was no limit. Thousands of people could share dreams together if they wanted to. They could all see the same things and talk to each other while they slept. People on Earth could dream with people living near other stars. Families separated by years of space travel could meet in dreams every night. Workers could learn new jobs by dreaming with teachers on other worlds. Colony Administrator Lisa Grant had been listening from the back of the room. She ran a settlement on a planet called Kepler 442b, where 12,000 people lived in domed cities. The planet was beautiful, but the people felt cut off from the rest of humanity. Messages from Earth took years to arrive, and supply ships came even less often. Lisa stepped forward and offered her entire colony as test subjects for the first big Dream Network trial. She wanted her people to feel connected to the human family again. Amanda felt excited as the council voted to approve the project. Within 6 months, the dream machines would be installed on 50 different worlds. Millions of people would be able to share dreams together. It would be the biggest step forward for human unity, since people first learned to talk to each other. But Amanda did not know that other things lived in the dark spaces between stars, and some of them were watching. Far across the galaxy, in places where normal matter could not exist, an ancient race called the Vorthak had been alive for millions of years. They did not have bodies like humans, but lived as pure thought and memory, floating between different layers of reality. The Vorthak had seen many species grow and build civilizations and then disappear into nothing. They had learned to hide in the spaces between sleeping and waking where most creatures never looked. The Vorthak spent their long lives protecting the universe from things that were even worse than death. In the deepest parts of space where no light could reach, there were creatures made of hunger and darkness. The Vorthak called them devourers because they ate thoughts and dreams and memories until nothing was left. For thousands of centuries, the Vorthak had fought these shadow beings and built walls around them to keep them trapped in the empty places between realities. The war never ended, but the Vorthak had learned to keep the devourers locked away where they could not hurt anyone. The devourers had been hungry for so long that they had almost forgotten what it felt like to eat. They pressed against their prison walls made of Vorthak will and ancient technology, but could never break free. They dreamed of the day when they would taste conscious thought again and grow strong enough to devour entire worlds. But the walls held and the Vorthak guards never slept. Then something changed. A bright light appeared in the dark spaces where the devourers lived. It was not like the cold light of stars, but warm and full of living thoughts. The light came from millions of human minds all connected together by Amanda's dream machines. To the Devourers, it looked like the biggest feast they had ever seen. Human dreams blazed across dimensions like a fire that called to everything hungry in the darkness. The Vorthak felt the change too. Their ancient sensors detected the human dream network as it came online and spread across the galaxy. At first they were curious about this young species that had learned to link minds together. But then they felt something else. The walls around the Devourer prison were getting thinner. Each time more humans joined the dream network, the barriers became weaker. Keeper Nethys was the oldest of the Vorthak and had fought the Devourers longer than any other. It felt the first small crack appear in the prison walls as Amanda activated the dream network, connecting all 50 human worlds. The crack was tiny, but it was enough. After millions of years of hunger, the Devourers had found a way to reach through the walls and touch the bright warmth of human thoughts. The first night of the colony-wide dream network test began as Amanda had planned. Thousands of humans across the galaxy fell asleep at the same time with the dream machines connected to their minds. They found themselves in shared dreams where they could see and talk to people from other worlds. Children on Earth played games with children living near distant stars. Scientists shared discoveries across impossible distances. Families torn apart by space and time held each other in dreams that felt completely real. But in the shadows at the edges of their dreams, something else was watching and learning and getting ready to feed. The Devourers had found their way into human dreams, and they were very, very hungry.